Greetings to you all, friends and foes. It's retired Lincoln's Inn solicitor, Fareed El Dawani here, with my second YouTube Mad Dogs and Englishmen broadcast on the iniquities and cover-ups of and by the British judiciary, solicitors and honourable members of the bar, barristers that is. Today is Wednesday the 20th of September 2023 and I will be showcasing my book entitled Sir Geoffrey Vos, Master of the Rolls at the Royal Courts of Justice, Misconduct in Public Office, a book available from Amazon at £14.99. There it is in front of you. Now everything centres around the wild and unrestrained sexual appetite of my former Norwegian companion, Heidi Schön. And you can see there Verdens Gang VG newspaper with her there looking sorry for herself under the headlines on me, 13 years of sex terror. So I wasn't going to have any of that rubbish, of course, so I initiated my own corrective campaign, and for the next 12 years I made the front pages as a Muslim sex terrorist, and there you can see there she is smiling, dear Heidi Schön, and it became 23 years of Muslim sex terror, and it was all about me being Muslim. And you can see there's a book there by Sindre Bangstad. He's a Norwegian academic, Oslo University, a Christian, and his book Anders Breivik and the Rise of Islamophobia. It's an excellent book and supports my arguments that Norway was a far-right Islamophobic country, which has been well and truly covered up by the Western press, basically. But it's quite true there, and I had to wait quarter of a century, before any judge declared Heidi Schön, my former companion from Norway, to be a liar, and that was Mr. Justice Saini at the Royal Courts of Justice in 2021, paragraph 45 of his judgment, saying that Heidi Schön, her stories were far from the truth. So, quarter of a century, dear friends, waiting for a judge to vindicate me. So that's very good. Now we'll come back to Mr. Justice Vos in a second, but first of all I'd like to show you my book here, Lady Justice Sharp, Treachery and Betrayal. That's also available on Amazon, and I'm happy to say that this book helped considerably in making sure Lady Justice Sharp did not become the next Lord Chief Justice. Sir Ian Burnett is retiring on the 1st of October, the present Lord Chief Justice. Lady Justice Sharp was the favourite, but having distributed that book to many High Court judges and judges at the Supreme Court, and as well as having a website on her called Lady Justice Sharp coverup.com, scuppered her chances of becoming the next Lord Chief Justice. Lady Justice Carr has succeeded in taking the post, even though Victoria Sharp was the favourite. So it does help. It does help campaigning. It does succeed sometimes. I'm also grateful to this book here by Shimon Shetreat, Judges on Trial, The Independence and Accountability of the Judiciary. It's a second edition, Cambridge Studies in Constitutional Law. Shimonshi Treat is an academic in a university in Jerusalem, and I'm grateful to him for his book because he has helped me tremendously. So let's get on with it, shall we? Sir Geoffrey Vos, Master of the Rolls at the Royal Courts of Justice, Misconduct in Public Office. Now, as I said, we're talking about the troublemaker, my former companion and girlfriend in St Albans in Hertfordshire from 1982, who had a voracious sexual appetite, and everything centres around sex. So, and it's little wonder that Norway's Aftenposten newspaper in 2003 described Norwegian youth as world leaders in casual sex and one-night stands, an attribute they were proud to announce, almost as a badge of honour. The British judiciary, however, when examining my exposure of Norway's dirty little secrets, double standards and hypocrisy, took a fraudulent stance against me. It was pathetic, and they decided that I'd taken a step too far in my pronouncements, in my allegations, which were all true. But as George Orwell said in his preface to that great book of his, Animal Farm, and I quote, "If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear." And half the time, the ones with the money and the power in the legal profession and the law, they say it's harassment. That's a fantastic little trick, which the Norwegians used on me as well. Now, the most deceitful aspect of judicial behaviour I found when a judge dealt with me face to face was that one spends one's time at a hearing putting one's case, yet again, as it has already been set out fully in the statement sent to the court, and the most crucial aspects are often never discussed or debated in any meaningful way at that hearing. So, when the judgment is handed down and one finds that the judge has made a fundamental error or ignored a submission put to them, it is too late to do anything about it. A judge should disclose his preliminary views or thinking during the hearing to give one the chance to correct or rebut those views, and so prevent a possible miscarriage of justice. Justice was similarly thwarted when a judge considered my applications on paper, that is, without a hearing, and often gave no reasons or substantive reasons beyond saying the application is hopeless or has no merit when rejecting my request for relief. What I wanted to know was exactly why my application had no merit. For example, why was it ruled acceptable by Mr. Justice J and then Lord Justice Bean that a law firm can argue that an individual is clearly mentally unstable without a diagnosis or opinion from a doctor being given to the court to back that argument up? When I wrote back to Mr. Justice J in 2021 asking for him to at least give me a clue as to why my application was rejected, he got his clerk to write back to me disgracefully that he had nothing more to add. So I appeal, and Lord Justice Bean tells me, in rejecting my application to reopen, that Mr. Justice J doesn't have to give reasons if he doesn't want to say anything more than the basic, "this has no merit," for his ruling. Lord Justice Popplewell, when refusing to reopen my 2011 libel case against Police Sergeant Toril Sauter of Norway, told me in his 2023 order that he was not Islamophobic when rejecting my written request to condemn the vilest of hate emails imaginable, declared a hate crime by the Essex Police and referred to Interpol, emails such as my being told to go fuck Allah the camel and told that the Prophet Muhammad was a confused paedophile and asked if I licked the arseholes of pigs clean before eating them. Emails sent to me thanks solely to the actions of my High Court opponent, Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, who had in this Doug Bloodday newspaper article of 20th of December 2005 come up with the most preposterous lie imaginable, that I had spent 2 years locked up in a mental hospital from 1992 to 1994. It was an outrageous lie. I hadn't spent 2 seconds in any mental hospital. In fact, from 1989 to 1998, I was the Port of London Authority's commercial property solicitor with no 2-year gap for incarceration in a bloody mental hospital. And that is why Police Sergeant Toril Sauter now at last has been brought to disgrace, because she is a wretched liar. And all this was covered up by the great Mrs. Justice Sharp in 2011, and again in 2021 by Mrs. Justice May. And if anyone's interested, I did another book on Mrs. Justice May there called The Charlatan, High Court Judge in Abysmal Attempt to Cover Up Grotesque Norwegian Police Abuse. She's protecting Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, who is an abject liar. And if Police Sergeant Toril Sauter doesn't like it, she can sue me. Okay? She is an abject liar. And I hope she's punished in the next life by the good Lord. But anyway, let's get on with the story. Go back to Sir Geoffrey Vos's book. Lord Justice Popplewell, as I said, tells me he's not Islamophobic, he's not biased against me, when rejecting my specific requests 3 times to condemn me being told, for instance, to go fuck Allah the camel. It's like a dagger to my heart to have those comments made to me, because we Muslims, we take our religion seriously. I know most people nowadays don't take religion at all seriously. They don't give a damn. They're just interested in their jobs, wives, children, but we all have to die. We all end up, in the grave, and all we've got to rely on is God and his mercy afterwards. Life is short, as well we know. So Lord Justice Popplewell says he's not Islamophobic or biased against me when I asked 3 times to just condemn those emails which were received by me on the very day Police Sergeant Toril Sauter writes on the front page Dagbladet newspaper to 1.4 million people, 1.4 million readers in Norway on the 20th of December 2005 that I've been locked up for 2 years in a mental hospital. This is outrageous far-right crap, and the newspaper don't even ring me up to ask if it's true before printing it, and they call me half Arab Muslim man 3 times. So let's get back to this. Not Islamophobic. So all this, Mrs. Justice Sharp refusing to condemn those hate emails as well in 2011 when I read them out to her. So if you're listening, Sir Ian Burnett, I wrote to you for 4 years the same letter, enclosing Lord Pickle's letters, my former MP. He supported me. We wanted a change in the judicial conduct rules to make it an offence of misconduct for a judge to fail to condemn such filth that was absolutely essential to bring to the attention of the judge those hate emails, because it's the reason I sued Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter in the first place. Okay, for libel. In my 4 years of writing to Sir Ian, with those letters of support from Lord Pickles, Sir Ian's staff refused to pass on a single one of my letters to him. They even resorted to a smear campaign after I wrote that book on Lady Justice Sharp, and ended up reporting me to the Essex Police with ludicrous fabricated allegations. So if you're listening, Sir Ian Burnett, I have not been stalking you outside your home. I have not been stalking Lady Justice Sharp by turning up outside her home either, as alleged in your Secretary Ben Yallop's witness statement sent to Essex Police. The allegations are total horseshit, old boy, Sir Ian Burnett. Total horseshit. Okay, as the Essex Police well know. All right? So I hope your staff rot in hell for their misconduct in public office. The question is, Sir Ian, have you been turning a blind eye? So I did a book as well, Sir Ian, which you must by now know about, and here it is. It's on your staff. Lord Chief Justice Sir Ian Burnett, did you know? Okay, did you know? By me, Farid El-Dawani, ex-Lincoln's Inn solicitor. All right, so that's a great book. Everyone should buy it. Okay, and once they've read it, they'll see what power the people at the office of the Lord Chief Justice have. So we'll carry on. Anyway, talking of divine punishment, it's not very often that one's High Court opponents get blown up in the very same week as judgment is handed down. This was the case for me in my battle with the Norwegian Ministry of Justice and Police Norway in 2011, and in particular as a co-defendant, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter. So in the very week that Mrs. Justice Sharp handed down her judgment in July 2011, the very week, the Ministry of Justice and Police in Norway had their building blown up by mass murderer Anders Breivik, who hated Muslims. And the disaster that befell the ministry was the closest thing to divine intervention that I have seen when it came to a personal matter. Albeit that the hand of God came via the actions of that mass murderer and Muslim hater Anders Breivik, whose van bomb on the 22nd of July 2011 wrecked the building housing the Ministry of Justice and Police Oslo, killing 7 people, followed by Breivik driving on to Utoya Island and shooting dead 69 youths. A truly awful way to learn a lesson for the Norwegian government's brazen attempt to cover up Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter's gross misconduct, coupled with the Justice Ministry permitting a virulently Islamophobic press to spew their bile on me with impunity, with their decade-long stories on my alleged Muslim sex terror. My legal proceedings have reached their climax now at the Court of Appeal in London, so do pay attention, everybody. I will be exposing a good few of the cheats and bigots who pretended to be faithful adherents to the pursuit of truth and justice in litigation, at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. And I repeat, this includes members of the judiciary. The Metropolitan Police are on my side in my complaint against Lord Justice Popplewell, as was Lord Pickles, my former MP, in my related complaint against Mrs. Justice Sharp, refusing to condemn those vile hate emails. I'll read them out to you soon, so hang on in there. Sir Geoffrey Vos and his learned colleagues at the Court of Appeal, Lady Justice Falk and Lady Justice McClure, are, surprise, surprise, staunch defenders of Lord Justice Popplewell and Lady Justice Sharp. The Met Police, via Inspector Jeff Cook, were trying to talk to the Crown Prosecution Service over Andrew Popplewell's misconduct in public office when pointedly refusing to condemn me, being told, thanks to my High Court opponent, for example, as previously mentioned, to go fuck out of the camel, and that the Prophet Muhammad was a confused paedophile. Likewise for Mrs. Justice Sharp, now Lady Justice Sharp, with Lord Pickles writing in 2014 to Lord Chancellor Chris Grayling, shocked that Mrs. Justice Sharp did not condemn those same comments read out to her by me in court, and very much a central aspect of my evidence. I repeat, very much a central aspect of my evidence. It was not a side issue. If you haven't already, make the time to look at my YouTube broadcast of the 4th of September 2023 for a first-class resume on the sleight-of-hand manoeuvres and bullshitting that takes place within a certain sector of the monolith they call the legal profession, judges, solicitors and barristers. Please also refer to my websites for detailed insights on the issues, farideldawani.com and ladyjusticesharp-coverup.com, and in particular norwayuncovered.com. That norwayuncovered.com was the website that got me a trumped-up conviction for so-called harassment in 2003 in Norway, forced to confess. So see how I became public enemy number one in Norway. Succeeded, of course, in the fullness of time by Anders Breivik. And it is hatred and contempt for Islam and Muslims which form the basis of this broadcast, together with my condemnation of the British judiciary, save for Deputy Judge Hugh Mercer, QC, now KC, and Mr. Justice Stewart, now retired judge, who were pillars of integrity and very fair in their assessments of the issues. Mr. Justice Saini was also very helpful, but even he made some blunders which cost me dearly. I came to realise that asking for permission to appeal the judgment of a High Court judge in my several applications in different but related cases was a complete waste of time. The main concern of the Court of Appeal was not to rectify glaring mistakes of the judge below, but to protect that particular High Court judge's reputation, if at all possible, by giving him a very wide margin of error and great latitude in deciding what to include or not to include as relevant evidence. Very rarely indeed is permission to appeal granted. What was a straightforward neglect of duty or blatant cover-up in my eyes was regarded as good case management, or just an acceptable mistake insufficient to warrant the case being reviewed by the Court of Appeal. And for reasons that few laymen could possibly have envisaged. When Mrs. Justice Sharp failed to condemn the Norwegian hate crime that was thrust upon me by the High Court defendant, Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, being those said hate emails which were referred by the Essex Police to Interpol Norway, this determination not to condemn them was excused as unimpeachable judicial decision-making by Lord Justice Vos and his two colleagues at the Court of Appeal this July just gone, on the grounds that any condemnation of that material by Mrs. Justice Sharp or Lord Justice Popplewell was not necessary in the circumstances, as, and I quote, it did not fall to be decided. It did not fall to be decided. Absolute crap. It upset me for years, those truly vile, sexualised, Islamophobic hate emails. Mrs. Justice Sharp knew it hurt me. To be told, for example, going to fuck your mother, she likes white man, and told that my semen was only fit for a pig, and told that the Prophet Muhammad was a confused paedophile. It's awful, awful stuff. And you expect, just on grounds of common humanity, for it to be condemned. But no, Mrs. Justice Sharp, not a word in her in court or in her judgment. The person who caused those comments to be sent to me by email was the very person I was suing for libel at the High Court, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter. My reading those dozen or so hate emails out to Mrs. Justice Sharp at the High Court in 2011 was completely relevant and entirely appropriate. Their receipt in my inbox from Norway on the 20th of December 2005 alerted me to the fact that something significant must have happened in Norway. Indeed it had. Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter had told 1.4 million readers of Dagbladet newspaper on the 20th of December 2005 in the online version, because it was repeated next day to another million readers on the 21st of December. She told the complete fabrication that I had spent 2 years incarcerated in a mental hospital, when I had not spent 2 seconds in any bloody mental hospital. It was wholly appropriate then for Mrs. Justice Sharp to express her regret and condemnation of that filth sent to me by Norwegians who believed Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter and her perverted fabrication that I'd been locked up for 2 years. So let's read out some of those emails just to show you how bad they were. So here's one. This one was the next day, 21st of December 2005. Are you by any chance a Catholic priest? And did your daddy touch your penis and or dropped you on the head when you were born? Or maybe your parents suffered for BSS, baby shaking syndrome. Either way, you are one fucked up dude. Did someone touch your bum in the mental ward? Oh hell, all Norway knows you are crazy as fuck, man. But I think you are funny, very sad but funny. I give you, let's say, 10 years and I bet that you have killed yourself or at least gotten another hobby than harassing women you can't get. Ha ha, such a wanker. What triggered your funny behaviour? Are you sick or just a horny helpless loser? Tried Prozac combined with Viagra. Oh wait, I'm sure someone tried that combo in the mental ward when they made love to your bum. Do you call your penis King Kong? Happy Christmas, motherfucker. Oh wait, I bet you are inbred. Your dad is your son, is your mum, is your sister, is your uncle, is your bum. P.S. I eat fetuses for breakfast and it's Mr. Americum. And here's another one. Let's have a look. This was 21st of December, sent to me at 12:15 from someone called Lars Runa. Got his email address here, and he just says, die 20 times. Yes, I hope you die, arsehole. The next one here, someone called Christian Ingebrigtsen, although I doubt that's his right name. 20th of December 2005. I have to laugh. What a pathetic little Muslim bastard you are. You're obviously insane, just like most of your kind. I can understand your fascination and envy of Norway and our women. However, you can never in your entire lifetime have such a great life as we have. The world isn't made that way. I strongly advise you to immediately shut down your website, at least all references to Norwegian persons. We don't like it when you and your people publish such crap, and that's the norwayuncovered.com website. Still going. Here's another one from Mats Henriksen, 20th of December 2005 at 14:12. May Allah put you back behind bars where you belong, fucking creep. Here's another one, 20th of December again, 2005, 11:18. Someone called Sylvie Strandman. You are a very disturbed guy. You only write lies about Norway and the girl you have terrorised for many years. And last but not least, you only have lies on your site. You don't mention that you have been in a mental institution. So you see, you are the disturbed one, not everybody else. So there's one who believed Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter's garbage. And here's another one. Ollie Dahl, 20th of December, 1326. You are the sickest fucker I ever let my eyes on. Come to Norway and I will show you what a real man will do. You are a little man with no balls and a big dangerous mouth. Too dangerous for your own health. Maybe you like a visit. Stay off Heidi's back. You should have been lobotomized. Sick fuck. That's right. Here's one. We hope you. Here's another one. Someone called Eat Fuck. 20th of December. We hope you remove the Norway Uncovered site and kill yourself, because the world will be a better place without you. Gia Abrahamson, 20th of December 2005 at 11:43. Hey, can't see you on top of the bastard list where you should have been. Of course, Christian people hate Muslims with a person like you around. Get some help. They have doctors for persons like you. Regards. And it says from one of many Christian Norwegian married to a Catholic which you are at war with inside the United Kingdom. So, another one here, 20th of December again, 2005, 11:53. Of course, it's the same day the newspaper Dag Blade came out. The subject is, you are fucking crazy. I would like to give a big laugh to you, most stupid crazy fuck. Have you gotten your head examined lately? I would like to point out to you that being stupid knows no colour. I was once a Muslim, but when I realised that the Prophet Muhammad couldn't be anything else than a confused paedophile, I knew that a true God would never speak to such a loony. So you think that killing a fetus that has not gained consciousness is more wrong than raping children? It is more and more clearly that you are insane. The only humane thing to do is to place a gun to your head and pull the trigger. But I suppose it wouldn't do much damage, hence the damage is clearly well done. I hear that your mother got you into hospital. Bad Muslim taking orders from a woman. May I recommend a rope around your neck, since you're never coming to paradise. Better to end your misery, right? Now, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter told Dag Blade newspaper that it was my own mother that put me in a mental hospital for 2 years in 1992. So, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter, if you're listening, you are the scum of the earth. You have no right to be a police officer, and I will pursue you for the rest of your life for justice until you are in prison. Okay? And you better take it seriously. Here's another one, 21st of December, someone calling himself Tom Bano, 10:23 on the 21st of December. He says, after visiting your website, I can now understand why your mother had you put away for a while. Clearly the best option. Someone, Marcus G, on the 20th of December at 14:28. We have put a €10,000 reward on your head. We're going to get you, man. We're going to clear the world from an idiot like you. Burn in hell. P.S. Going to fuck your mother. She likes white man. Obviously, the person who wrote that thought because of my name that my mother was probably dark-skinned. That's a nice one for Black Lives Matter. Going to fuck your mother, she like white man, which Mrs. Justice Sharp couldn't be bothered to condemn or express a word of regret at. Here we are, there's another one. Johnny's gonna get you, you sick fucking Muslim fucker. There's one by Julie G. Rottens, 20th of December 1350. Sick devil, go fuck Allah the camel. 21st of December 1106, from someone called Yeah Baby. You must be the sickest fuck ever. Muslims are the root to all evil, and you are the living proof of it. Now, just for some balance, let me read out to you some emails from people who actually liked my website. Some good Norwegians. These were people who had the integrity and were well brought up people. This one was sent to me on the 10th of February 2006, which was about couple of weeks after the Dagbladet newspaper came out the previous December. He says, "Dear Sir, I have incidentally come across this NorwayUncovered.com page on the net and found many interesting points about my home country. I just want to say that I find most of your experiences credible and to the point. In my opinion, Norway is lacking in true professionalism in many aspects of public life, leaving quite a number of people, also native Norwegians, victims of circumstances and ill-doers. As I gather from the internet page, your bad experiences and interest in the dark side of Norway started with Heidi Schön. I can only offer my sympathy and also add that there has been a number of such women exposed as liars and criminals in the last decade." So he goes on, "Unfortunately, political correctness is a disease under which the Norwegian society suffers heavily. Quote, women are poor and defenceless, and, quote, all men are rapists, are only two of the politically correct, in brackets, incorrect," he puts, statements in Norway, coupled with a lack of professionalism in the newspapers and the judicial system. These politically correct statements paved the way for a large number of miscarriages of justice. The most common case is that of a divorce involving children. A very common practice, I am ashamed to say, has been for the wife to claim some sort of sexual abuse towards her or a child, when in reality no such thing has occurred. The reason for such a claim is to obtain full parental control of the children after divorce. This will make sure that the wife can control the husband's contact with the children, making it no contact usually, and at the same time sure that the husband will have to pay very substantial amounts of money to the wife regularly until all the children are considered adults by law, that is, 18 years of age. The very unfortunate fact about the Norwegian judicial system is that until recently the wife and her lawyer usually backed this claim only by expert statements from psychologists. Except for one or two outrageous cases that were appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, the Norwegian courts never contradicted these expert psychologist claims. This situation was revealed to the public in a series of articles in the Norwegian newspaper Adresseavisen in 2000 or 2001. Cannot remember exactly. When a number of lawyers wanted an end to the shameful practice. The lawyers also said that lawyers dealing with divorces knew a number of psychologists willing to give any kind of expert statement in court for money. Thus, they could arrange a divorce to whatever outcome just by false accusations through a very severe lack of professionalism on the behalf of both lawyers, psychologists and courts. The use of psychologists in Norwegian courts has now been changed, also due to their abysmal part in the Bungen case, which is spelt Bjugn. Can't pronounce Norwegian properly, but sounds like Bungen case, where a vast number of children were falsely claimed to have been abused by a number of men. The Norwegian Society of Psychologists have also publicly excused the misconduct of some of their members involved in these cases. This is just to say that I think part of your impression of a Norwegian general dislike of Muslims and Islam is that you have experienced the kind of injustice that many native Norwegians have also experienced. I don't think it makes your experiences better, but one should always try to call a spade a spade. I think there has been a change in attitude in the courts in Norway the last years, and a number of people have had their cases reopened and gotten their names cleared. These cases were given major headlines in the newspapers when they were first run, but when they are now reopened, the newspapers do not care about them. This goes only to show that the papers are not very serious in this country, but I think it also shows that even here a lie is a lie and will only take you so far. I also feel that even though the feminist movements still are a major factor for establishing what is politically correct in Norway, they have also begun to feel some embarrassment by some of the acts of their sisters. My thoughts on abortion mirror yours, I think, and even if you might not think so from the public debate in Norway, there is a number of people that is really frustrated by the abortion laws. For instance, it has been very difficult for the hospitals to find enough doctors and nurses willing to work at the abortion clinics. This is a fact that the media and official Norway has been wanting to stay out of public knowledge. In fact, abortion is such a sensitive subject, it is not seen as a proper subject to discuss at all. The government does not want a public debate on abortion, and I think this is so because they know that a majority, or at least a large minority, of the Norwegian people is against it, and the way it is practiced. It is a disgrace. But people who officially protest about the abortion laws are frozen out of society. I hope you will continue this web page, as I find it to be an important addition to the shallow Norwegian debate on our society. However, I think the way some of it is written now, many Norwegians will feel offended before they manage to get the truth of it. If you are interested in reading about the Bungen case, I can recommend this link, and he gives the link for it. Knut Erik Aagaard has written many interesting articles presented here, but the ones entitled Overgreps Lorden 1 to 10 are about the Bungen case. They were all published in the Oslo newspaper Arbeiderbladet, which today is called Dagsavisen. Best regards. He gives his name, but I'm not disclosing it because he didn't want me to. So that's one fantastic email of support for my website, which those Norwegians gave me a conviction for in 2003, an ambush arrest when I was in Norway, and the public prosecutor then told me in no uncertain terms, if you do not freely and voluntarily confess your guilt to harassment of Heidi Schön, you're going straight to prison. I knew she wasn't kidding. I confessed. The solicitors regulation authority found out about it 16, 17 years later, because I wasn't going to tell them. No way was I going to tell them. It was pure Islamophobic prosecution, so I'm not telling you the SRA. So you can get stuffed if you think I'm going to confess to wrongdoing. I'm not. You're the Islamophobic bigots, not me. Well, couldn't be me, could it? Here's another one from Pablo. He wrote on the 13th of October 2007. He just then found my NorwayUncovered.com website. I'll read out his first paragraph. Wow, I mean wow. I've just read much of your NorwayUncovered.com page and I'm absolutely blown away. I'm not sure if it is in a good or a bad way, but the message that you bear in this site is very revealing. I'm an Utvandrer and was born and raised in Norway till I moved overseas at the age of 14. Today I am an American citizen living in the US. I would like to share my experience with you because much of what you write about in this webpage hits so close to home it's damn frightening. And he goes on a very long letter indeed, a very long email. And, simply fantastic, praise for the website. And I merely replied to the garbage that had been put on for years about me. I only set the website up in 2000, which was 5 years after the first front pages came out about me, and after 8 front pages calling me insane Muslim sex terrorist, 13 years of sex terror, 16 years of sex terror, I thought I have to put a website up. And when I was suing for libel in Norway in 2003, I was arrested at the door of the courtroom in Drammen District Court by the police who were waiting at the door of the courtroom the moment the case finished. The judge must have told them, to come along. And I was told, you're being arrested because of your website. And I hadn't put anything untoward there about Heidi Schön, just her own sexual history and psychiatric history. She was herself a registered mental patient. And as Mr. Justice Saini has declared in his recent judgment, she was a liar. So I had to have some form of reply, and that's what my NorwayUncovered.com website did. What the Norwegians, the real issue was that I had spoken about abortion in Norway and put some pictures of aborted fetuses on there, which showed really that even fetuses that are a few weeks old are going to become living children. And even Anders Breivik was appalled that he said, you may have accused me of being a child killer, but the Norwegian state has killed 500,000 prospective children since the abortion laws took hold in Norway, which is a damn sight more than me. So, and he criticised the sexual promiscuity of women in Norway, saying all they live for is one night stands and easy sex, and this is degrading our society. So, in 2 respects, Breivik was 100% right. His actions, of course, were appalling, killing those innocent victims. God bless them all. But to this day, his views are much appreciated in Norway on the evil of Islam and Muslims. And that's what this this book here, Anders Breivik and the Rise of Islamophobia by Sindra Bangstad, goes to talks about, you know, the way Norwegian society is so sort of inbred and corrupted that they can't help themselves, and they produce people like Breivik. So and here's another huge newspaper article on me there. Drammen Tidende. This was May 1995, and there was another one, Drammen Tidende. They called me Muslim man 19 times in one article. So what did I do? I told the press that if you don't immediately apologise for this, because I'd sent them Heidi Schön's love letters, several of her love letters to me, you know, telling me what a lovely guy I was, that I didn't treat her like a sex object. Even one of them, she asked if we could get married because she loved me dearly. And, you know, it's and those were the letters that Mr. Justice Saini read in order to be able for him to rule that Heidi Schön was a liar. So what I did, I issued my own so-called press releases on Heidi Schön, and I used the fax machine to send them to the general public in Norway, the general public all over Norway, hundreds, and it was a very effective weapon for me to use the fax machine, because the Norwegian press were not going to print my side of the story at all. They thought I was an evil Muslim son of a bitch, and you know, they just couldn't care less. And that's why eventually they got their their karma, because this newspaper, Verdens Gang here, they were blown up too. Their offices were blown up too, by Anders Breivik's van bomb on the 22nd of July 2011, which was 7 days before Mrs. Justice Sharp brought out her judgment, siding completely with Police Sergeant Toril Sauter. What a shit bitch of a thing to do, to side with Police Sergeant Toril Sauter. You know, that's what the judiciary do, and that's probably another reason why Mrs. Justice Sharp, Lady Justice Sharp, never got the top post as Lord Chief Justice, because to actually defend Police Sergeant Toril Sauter after causing those hate emails to be sent to me, with the massive lie that I've been locked up for 2 years in a mental hospital, that is a disgraceful piece of misconduct by Sharp. Disgraceful. And if you don't like it, Mrs. Justice Sharp or Victoria Sharp, sue me, okay, when you've retired. So this is what I write. This is what I write to in my faxes. Owing to wholly false reports printed in May 1995 by the following now disgraced journalists: Ingen Roren of Drammen Tidende, Håkon Schröder of Bergens Tidende, Harold Vickер of Verdens Gang, a response must be made to acquaint the Norwegian public on how they have been deceived by the editors of the above newspapers. The facts are as follows. The sex terror referred to in the press was in fact started by Heidi Schön's, then Heidi Overår, her first boyfriend Peter, who twice got the teenager pregnant and on each occasion begged her to have an abortion, threatening to leave her if she did not. Heidi aborted on each occasion, hoping to keep her boyfriend, who, however, eventually left her anyway. Psychological sex terror by one Norwegian on another. The Statistics Office of Norway state that today 1 in 5 pregnancies in Norway end in termination, which probably makes Norway, in percentage terms, the largest nation of fetal child killers in the world. Norvège 0 point. It's now 1 in 3 pregnancies in Norway. So lads, if any of you get a Norwegian girlfriend, and just remember, if you get her pregnant, which she probably won't tell you if she wants an abortion, then you've got a 1 in 3 chance of losing the child you've been longing to have. And makes a mockery, doesn't it, of women spending tens of thousands of pounds on IVF treatment. But anyway, that's it. That's the girl's right. Kill your child, abort it if you want to. So then I continue point 2. The sex terror continued in the form of another so-called boyfriend of Heidi, Gudmund Johansen, now of Rolandslia 223 Ulsit Bergen, and now married to Nina Engerberg. Nice choice, Nina. Johansen, an ex-prison convict, got Heidi pregnant with twins in 1984, but he slept with Heidi's best friend afterwards, and when Heidi found out, she miscarried and attempted suicide. Continually pestered for sex afterwards, Heidi again became pregnant to Johansen in 1986 whilst he was injecting heroin, purchased in China, and whilst he was also sleeping with other women. The facts of which Heidi, a delinquent, was well aware of, but all she was interested in was good sex. An illegitimate child was born, and both parents had 2 AIDS tests each, for fear of having contracted HIV due to their high-risk behaviour. Notes the hypocritical indignation with which Dramens Tidende, the newspaper, showed Heidi being pictured with Christian advice booklets on AIDS and abortion, deceiving the public again. Rarely having lived together and never having married, Johansen again rejected Heidi and their son in 1988, following which Heidi made a second suicide attempt, prepared to leave her 2-year-old son motherless as well as effectively fatherless, later saying her son's grandparents would have looked after him had she succeeded in committing suicide. Psychological sex terror by one Norwegian against another. So, with me being called an insane Muslim psychopath, who'd written 5,840 letters to Heidi Schön, threatened to kill her 2-year-old son, that I was allegedly suffering from severe erotic paranoia, threatened to kill her neighbours, her friends, had made 13 years of death threats, 13 years of obscene phone calls. And as for those 13 years of obscene phone calls, it just so happened that not one of them was recorded by her. Really? And the 5,840 letters I wrote to her, she hadn't kept them. She'd thrown them away, she says. Yes, how convenient. So I've got every right to speak the truth about her sexual situation and the sex terror that was foisted upon her apparently by others, not me. So anyway, in 1986 a letter was written by the Muslim man, that's me, to Heidi's father, warning of her suicidal risk behaviour. The letter was ignored. In the autumn of 1988, Heidi entered the Buskerud Psychiatric Hospital in Lier near Drammen, but with no appreciable response to treatment. I think it was sex addiction, whatever that is. After leaving the clinic, Heidi was exorcised from demons by her so-called Christian neighbours Asbjorn and Heidi Anita Skortnes, and claimed she spoke in tongues and that her foot grew by 1/4 inch. Heidi's Christian neighbours' marriage broke up when Mrs. Skortnes left her husband and 2 children for another man she met when she started work at a Drammen department store. Point 6. In 1989, Heidi Overall became a Christian, and having failed to persuade the Muslim man living in England to convert to Christianity, she married a self-styled exorcist, Runar Schön, well practiced in the art of speaking in tongues. Twice in the 1980s, Heidi Overall complained to the Bergen police that 2 different men had tried to rape her. No charges were brought. She also claimed that on holiday in Greece, Greek men had wanted to rape her at knife point. This the girl who in 1982 in Rhodes had sex with 2 different men on the beach. And my God, she was proud of it, Heidi Schön, having 2 different men having intercourse on the beach. In 1988, after being rejected by Gudmund Johansen, but before her suicide attempt, she requested that the Muslim man, that's me, living in England, travel to Norway with his best friend, a karate expert, to take Gudmund Johansen to the woods and tie him up or something. She wanted revenge. Now, that karate expert, my best friend, and still is the drummer with Uriah Heep, rock band Uriah Heep, Russell Gilbrook. She, because I told her about Russell, she knew he did karate and she wanted us to take Gudmund Johansen to the woods and tie him up as punishment for cheating on her. The next morning she rang me up at 6 a.m. saying she didn't want to do it now, changed her mind, so didn't go. And by the way, Uriah Heep are doing a British tour in March, ending up at Wembley Arena with Saxon and Judas Priest. So welcome everybody for that. Should be a great concert. So anyway, point 9: the 400 obscene letters described in the newspapers have never existed. So that's 400 obscene letters I wrote to her. Yeah, all thrown away, she says. Point 10: the Nedre Eiker police in Norway failed for 11 months to persuade Heidi to talk to them with regard to her May 1995 newspaper allegations. Eventually, they talked to her for the first time on the 17th of April 1996, after constant pressure for a full investigation was brought upon the police by the Muslim man from England, that's me. I wanted Heidi Schön investigated by the police, but the police did not want to prosecute me at all until 6 years later. Point 11: the police have not been able to produce or discover any of Heidi's neighbours who have been threatened with death. Point 12: the police have proved Heidi to be a liar when she claimed threats were made to kill her 2-year-old son. That's me. I was supposed to threaten to kill her 2-year-old son in a letter, which of course was never found because it was never written in the first place. Point 13: Niels Rettersdal, the psychiatrist who spoke at length about severe erotic paranoia in the newspaper, was tricked by the press in that he did not know that Heidi herself was herself a psychiatric patient, a delinquent, habitual liar, and refuge for sex-starved Norwegian men. A woman whose behaviour fitted that of a passive psychopath. Mr. Rettersdal has brought his profession and his own standing into disrepute by relying on the uncorroborated word of the press. It is Norwegians who have sexually terrorised and taken advantage of the psychopathic personality of Heidi Schön. Anyway, I put, surely the success of her marriage must be open to question, having so deceived her family and the public in general. And indeed, she later got divorced. Well, her marriage lasted a couple of years, so she got divorced. So I put, now the record has now been put straight and the newspapers have promised to print an apology now that the police have finished with their investigations, which did not start until the Muslim man begged them to investigate. So, well, the newspapers never did print my response at all, the dogs. So in the end, I said, this article is dedicated to the memory of the crushed and crunched dead of Muslim Bosnia, whose own primal screams were ignored, whilst in parallel the anti-Muslim Norwegian press attacked Muslims in a way that clearly illustrates why the attitude prevailed in Europe that enabled little or nothing to be done about the atrocities of the Serbs against the Muslims in Bosnia. So this 1995 attack on me, massive attack in Norway, happened just before the Srebrenica massacre in Bosnia of the Muslims. So I translated another one page, with similar stuff into Norwegian and faxed it all over Norway. Taught the press a damn good lesson, and Heidi Schön, of course. And I also put this on those faxes all over Norway. During her trial at the Drammen City Court from the 15th to the 18th of January 2002, the defendant Heidi Schön allowed her psychiatrist Dr. Petter Brock of the BSS, that's Buskerud Psychiatric Sykehus, Buskerud, the BSS Psychiatric Hospital in Lear, to give the following evidence on her behalf. 1. Heidi's stepmother had abused her mentally, making her very compliant. 2. Heidi's stepmother's father had sexually abused her. 3. Heidi had a tendency towards sexualized behavior. 4. Heidi had problems functioning sexually when in a proper relationship. This is all public information, by the way, so I'm doing nothing illegal by reading it out now. 5. Heidi did not in the past get far with her psychiatric treatment with Dr. Brock because of her identification with him as a man, as men were her main problem. 6. Heidi's stepmother had reported Heidi to the Child Protection Unit on false grounds. 7. Heidi had faced settled forms of punishment from her 2 older sisters. 8. That reports and letters on Heidi's life contained a core of truth. This was the stuff I'd been sending out earlier on her, so all true what I'd sent. On the 14th of July 1998, Drammen Tidende state newspaper stated that the above-mentioned Norwegian language report on Heidi Schön's life, quote, had no basis in reality. Well, that was crap as well, because her psychiatrist later said it had every basis in reality, what I wrote. That's the newspapers lying for you. Also, Judge Anders Stilloff of the Drammen City Court on the 11th of February 2002 declared that the report I'd been sending out on Heidi Schön's life was more or less correct. So all that I put out in my press releases, my corrective information sheets, which I sent out from 1996 to 1998, and I put the same information on my website, just a couple of pages on my website that mostly dealt with my criticisms of the Norwegian judicial system and the way the press behaved and my dislike for abortion. So, and also my severe criticism of the liar, Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, and her conduct. So the Norwegian police wanted to shut the website down, not so much because of what I'd said about Heidi Schön, but because what I'd said about Police Sergeant Toril Sauter and their legal system. For instance, I mean, you get, when you're in a civil case in Norway, believe it or not, at that time, the early 2000s, they didn't have the money to record the civil trial, the hearing. So if you wanted to appeal, you had no definitive record of what was said at the trial and hearing. And in England, that would never happen. You can get a transcript of the hearing. You have to pay for it, of course, to show what was said and exactly on what you can appeal, because you have to give the transcript to the judge at the Court of Appeal, you see. So, and also in criminal cases, you don't have to disclose you don't have to disclose your witness statements if there's a conflict of interest for your client, which is anathema in England. You must disclose everything to the opposition in England, even if it goes against your client. So I was criticising the Norwegian legal system in those respects and in those aspects, and it was that stuff that got me 2 convictions in Norway for harassment of Heidi Schön, and the Solicitors Regulation Authority said they cannot look behind the convictions. Convictions and convictions, and you've been convicted of harassment, and that's what got me struck off. The role of solicitors got me struck off. They did offer me 3 years suspension to begin with, but I rejected that because I thought it was too harsh. I told the SRA, Solicitors Regulation Authority, I've done nothing wrong, and 3 years suspension very much looks in the public eye as if I've done something wrong. So I refused it, much to my regret in a way, because I'd now be back working as a solicitor. And I didn't have a penny to be able to pay for legal representation. They expect you to fork out £50,000, do the Solicitors Regulation Authority, to get someone to speak on your behalf. And if you do that, then the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal will believe your case more than when you do it on your own. I haven't got 50 grand. So yeah, here's another email from a Norwegian woman. She says, writes to me, no wonder you hate us. I don't know what to say. You probably had no idea who Tor Erlingsstaff is, what position Farimo used to have, and so on. You should have had someone by your side all the way to ensure you got correct advice, enabling you to manoeuvre our corrupt labyrinth of bureaucracy. This is from a Norwegian lady. I hereby declare my unconditional support of you regarding the Heidi Schön case. I can only in my wildest dreams imagine what you have had to fight over the past years, and I guess I as a Norwegian is supposed to be amazed that you have taken all this so far. Usually we just bend over and take it up the arse when the mighty troll turns his ugly head our way. I am lost for words as to your taped conversations, which I now know to exist for a fact. Still, corruption is clearest to me in the PFU, which is the Pressens Faglid Utvalg, which is the Norwegian Press Complaints Commission, a wholly corrupt organisation. But the policeman lying under oath, and that's Toril Sauter, and the writer that claims you accused her of living in sin is just mind-boggling. Where does it end? Does it end? I, for one, have never been brave enough to tape conversations with officials displaying the same kind of behaviour as your villains. But you actually give me hope. Instead of fleeing this godforsaken country, I might start my own wars from now on. Thank you. Still hope you find peace, truth and justice. Change the layout of your page and we will all follow eventually. Sincerely yours. And she says, and I know you respect people enough to erase my email from the header when referencing this. There's another one who's too scared to want me to give her name. All this is on my website. So there we have it. The Norwegians prosecuted me under false pretenses. They were scared of my whistle blowing, and saying it was harassment of Heidi Schön was a ruse, because all I did was what every British newspaper does anyway, and that's expose the indiscretions and, the sexual history and psychiatric history, of my opponent, Heidi Schern. So I'd done nothing wrong, but the wicked Solicitors Regulation Authority and Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal, as well, of course, of Mrs. Justice Sharp, and now Sir Geoffrey Vos, who finally looked at my appeal against being struck off, they all decided that they can't look behind the convictions. Vos told me on the 27th of June 2023 at Court 71 at the Court of Appeal that he doesn't want to unpick 28 years of Norwegian history. I told him I've already, I didn't tell him, but what I had done was already unpicked it for him in concise terms in my witness statements and skeleton argument before him. All ignored. It's a disgrace. So Geoffrey Vos, you are a disgrace. And, you just ought to retire and let people, forget about you. It's unforgivable what you've done. So anyway, let's carry on now. So those hate emails which I've read out to you, naturally, in not condemning those comments, in the judiciary not condemning those comments, I had every justification for regarding Mrs. Justice Sharp as Islamophobic, which in her case meant not having any sympathy whatsoever for the victim of abhorrent Muslim-hating abuse. Okay, Islamophobic. Mrs. Sharp, I'll repeat that, in her case, her Islamophobia meant not having any sympathy whatsoever for the victim of abhorrent Muslim-hating abuse. When I found, to my horror, that subsequent Court of Appeal judges Sir Richard Buxton, Lord Justice Hooper, Lord Justice Jackson, and by 2023 Lord Justice Popplewell and Lord Justice Bean, as well as Mr. Justice Jay in 2021, did not condemn that vile abuse either, I had every right to declare all of them Islamophobic. But oh my, how the Master of the Rolls, Sir Geoffrey Vos, and his colleagues, Lady Justice McClure and Lady Justice Falk, resented that accusation and said so in their judgment. I will come to the details in a minute. How difficult can it be for any of these judges just to say, "I'm sorry you received this truly vile abuse"? For a judge to refuse to condemn it gives me the idea that I may have deserved it for being a really nasty piece of work in my underlying actions. It makes one think that the judge is against you, and you may be, and maybe too that the judge has a screw loose. It certainly makes me assume they are biased, Islamophobically biased. Islamophobia is defined as unreasonable dislike or prejudice against Islam or Muslims, especially as a political force. Legal commentators like Barry Baines and the Law Society Gazette just parroted what came out of the mouths of the judiciary over the years, when I was made to appear like an ignorant fool who had little idea of what he was doing. The legal press made no attempt to uncover the real deceit and bigotry that formed the basis of my unique brand of whistleblowing High Court litigation. Where has investigative journalism gone? Down the drain, as far as I am concerned, for the cowards of the Law Gazette, petrified no doubt at offending the top end of the legal establishment. None of the many judges who have covered up the iniquities I have faced over the years were Muslim. That is because there is not a single full-time Muslim judge at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. There isn't one black full-time judge either. The November 2022 Manchester University report called Racial Bias and the Bench, which I will show you here. There it is, Racial Bias and the Bench. It's a thick report compiled by Manchester University in November 2022, headed by Keir Monteith, King's Counsel. Okay, headed by Keir Monteith. And that report declared that there was institutional racism in the judiciary, which included Islamophobia. Okay, as Islamophobia is a form of racism. Quasi-racism, anyway. No wonder from 2011 to 2023, 2 High Court judges in the form of Mrs. Justice Sharp and Mr. Justice Jay, and 5 Lord Justices of Appeal, as already mentioned, failed to condemn those hate emails. They were not a side issue, not a side issue. As I've just said, it was the receipt of those sick insults from Norway which were central to my litigation against the Norwegian police, as they were sent to me on the very day Police Sergeant Toril Sauter was quoted telling 1.4 million Dagbladet newspaper readers in Norway the preposterous and malicious fabrication that I had spent 2 years, from 1992 to 1994, locked up in a psychiatric hospital, put there, moreover, the assistance of my own mother. The bigots at the Court of Appeal, Sir Geoffrey Vos, Lady Justice McClure and Lady Justice Falk, in their ludicrous judgment of the 26th of July 2023, wrote in paragraph 44 of their judgment, when defending the previous judges, quote, "A failure by a judge to express condemnation of racist language or indeed anything else, when that matter does not fall to be decided, cannot possibly give rise to a justified accusation of apparent bias or any other ground for complaint." So what I'm saying, it is the words "when that matter does not fall to be decided" which are so inappropriate and misleading. I read all those sick emails out to Mrs. Justice Sharp on the 16th of March 2011 to show her the result or consequences that followed from Police Sergeant Toril Sauter's fabricated information in Dagbladet newspaper on the 20th of December 2005, when she said I had been incarcerated in a mental hospital from 1992 to 1994. Readers believed Police Sergeant Toril Sauter and said so in their emails to me, which I've read out already. Those emails, as I've already said, were declared a hate crime by the Essex Police and referred to Interpol Norway in 2007. I even sent them on to Knut Storberget, the Norwegian Minister of Justice, in the same week they were received by me in December 2005. He gave my complaint the ministerial reference number 13113, and in spite of several years, yes, years of chasing the ministry up, I heard not a word more out of them. In response to that libel by Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, I wrote on Norwegian social media newspaper forums that she, Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, was a liar, cheat and abuser, saying her comments were a complete and malicious fabrication. As I said, from 1989 to 1998, I was a commercial property solicitor for the Port of London Authority, with no 2-year gap or even 2-minute gap as a resident in any mental hospital. It was total bollocks coming from a cheat in Norwegian Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, a really nasty piece of work, in revenge for her being exposed by me in civil court proceedings in Norway in 2002 as being an abject liar, when telling the court that my mother had told her that she, my mother, had put me in a mental hospital on one occasion. I was represented then by Norwegian lawyer Stig Lund, very hard-working chap. Torrell Sauter, under cross-examination from Mr. Lund, said she had made no attendance note of her alleged conversation with my mother, could not remember who phoned who or on what day, or even remember what year the conversation was supposed to have taken place, in which my mother tells her I had been put in a mental hospital on one occasion by my mummy. As I had never been in any mental hospital at all, my mother could hardly have told her that she had put me in one. I read out to Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter the following year, 2003, at the Drummond District Court, my family doctor's letter confirming that I had not received any psychiatric treatment and had not seen the inside of a mental hospital, which I gave to the judge. I put it to Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter that she had lied the previous year when telling the court that my mother had told her I had been put in a mental hospital. She stayed silent. The judge ignored Torrell Sauter's perjury. In 2005, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter, still bitter at being caught out, magnifies her original lie to tell the whole country in Dagbladé that it was now 2 whole years from 1992 that I had been locked up in a mental hospital at the insistence of my mother. So, what does Torrell Sauter do after reading my reprimands on Norwegian social media in Christmas 2005? She immediately goes to another newspaper called Ikabladet, and on the 11th of January 2006, she is quoted as saying that I am clearly mentally unstable, as I have called her a liar and corrupt. And she claims that this amounts to severe harassment of her, and that she was only doing her duty as a police officer in informing the public of my criminal behaviour in harassing her for her role in trying to help the unfortunate and much harassed Heidi Schön. Former girlfriend. Ikabladet newspaper named me, Farid El-Dawani, and called me Muslim. Of course, Torrell Sauter, Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter, did not explain that I was outraged at her fabricated allegation a few weeks earlier to Dagbladé newspaper that I had spent 2 years locked up in a mental hospital. So, for 12 years from 1995 to 2006, the Norwegian press have been labelling me Muslim in connection with my role as a sex terrorist with Heidi Schön. I should be so lucky. These Norwegian newspapers, it was true neo-Nazi, far-right Islamophobic behaviour from the Norwegian press, which Detective Constable Alex Malin of the Metropolitan Police in Belgravia, London, told me in 2019 would be prosecuted for incitement to religious hatred if a British newspaper had done likewise. In 2010, the journalist at Ikabladet newspaper, Roy Hansen, decided to revive his 11th of January 2006 story with a skillful use of Google Webmaster Tools. He created a Translate This Page link to his original Norwegian language article, and which link had my name on it, and it appeared as such after doing a Google search on my name. Then, when one clicked on the Translate This Page link, up comes a Google translation into English of Roy Hansen's 2006 Norwegian article. It was by no means a correct translation, but one could still see my name and it being associated with a Norwegian police sergeant calling me clearly mentally unstable. I thought that in time, in a matter of months, if not a year or two, the translation would greatly improve and eventually be perfected. This has turned out to be the case. Google translations are very good now, very good from all languages, including Norwegian. Norwegian to English. I knew I had to nip this libel harassment in the bud when it came up again in 2010, this Norwegian dirty trick. as I could not afford prospective clients of mine, as a Lincoln's Inn solicitor in Old Square, reading that I am clearly mentally unstable, coming from a police officer, and I immediately wrote to journalist Roy Hanson at Eigerbladet newspaper asking him to remove his link. He refused. I sued him and Police Sergeant Toril Sauter and for good measure her employer, the Ministry of Justice and Police Norway. I got judgment awarded in my favour by the High Court, but only because the Norwegian lawyer acting for Toril Sauter had failed to provide an address for service in the United Kingdom in the acknowledgement of service, when saying that the case should be heard in Norway instead. Toril Sauter used a Norwegian lawyer who was not familiar with the High Court civil procedure rules. One had to provide an address for service in the United Kingdom and not Norway. After that, Miss Sauter and her ministry instructed City of London solicitors Charles Russell, James Quatermain, the solicitor, to set aside that judgment. The biggest set of libel barristers in London, the chambers of 5RB, that's 5 Raymond Buildings, was chosen to represent the Norwegians in court, being 5 Raymond Buildings in Gray's Inn. Barrister David Hurst doing Miss Sauter's dirty work, gaslighting, as it's called now, doing someone else's dirty work for them. I had been a commercial property solicitor all my life and had little idea of the complexities of the laws of libel and slander. All that concerned me was that these inbred Norwegian scumbags should not get away with their deceit and Islamophobia by calling me a clearly mentally unstable Muslim. No way. So, Mrs. Justice Sharp made no comment in court or in her judgment, either in relation to the horrendous nature of those Islamophobic email comments, or even by way of an explanation that it was those emails which were the catalyst for my libel litigation. Those emails, on any reckoning, formed an integral link in my story and the libel I was suing over. My MP, Eric Pickles, government minister then, complained to Lord Chancellor Chris Grayling in 2014 about Victoria Sharp's inhumanity in not condemning this vile filth, and asked for a meeting to discuss changing the judicial conduct rules to make it an offence of misconduct not to condemn. Material that's going to offend a religious community. If only for the sake of the likes of Victoria Sharp not having the common sense to maintain good relations with a large Muslim faith community in this country by unequivocally condemning those comments. I had not deserved them. It greatly upset me receiving them, and it still does. Even more so now, after the crass comments of Sir Geoffrey Vos, Lady Justice McClure and Lady Justice Falk, when declaring that in their recent judgment that condemnation of those email insults did not fall to be decided by any of the judges considering my case. In what way, I wonder, did it not fall to be decided? I lodged a libel claim for being accused of being clearly mentally unstable when calling Police Sergeant Toril Sauter precisely what she so obviously was, a liar, cheat and abuser. This is where covert and subtle judicial bigotry now takes centre stage. For Mrs. Justice Sharp in 2011, and 12 years later on appeal, Lord Justice Popplewell, Sir Geoffrey Vos, Lady Justice McClure and Lady Justice Falk, it mattered not a jot that I had not spent 2 years or even 2 seconds in any psychiatric hospital, as alleged by Police Sergeant Toril Sauter to 2 million Dagbladet readers in Norway on the 20th and 21st of December 2005. It mattered not a jot to any of these judges that I cannot therefore possibly be clearly mentally unstable for calling Toril Sauter a liar, cheat and abuser. What mattered to these 3 judges, what fell to be decided on their reckoning, was that I was not allowed in law to sue the Norwegian Ministry of Justice and Police Norway or its employee, Police Sergeant Toril Sauter, due to the State Immunity Act 1978, which forbids an overseas government or its employees being sued anywhere other than in their home country, save in the case of certain commercial transactions as set out in that State Immunity Act, or, and this is important, where the defendant was out on a frolic of their own. By that it is meant that the employee of an overseas government department was not acting in accordance with the purpose of their employment, but doing something unconnected, and in Torrell Sauter's case, doing something illegal and deceitful, telling the nation that I had been locked up in a mental hospital for 2 whole years, when all the time I was the Port of London Authority's commercial property solicitor. I told Mrs. Justice Sharp that when I started my libel claim, I did not know about the State Immunity Act 1978, but even so, I argued that, if not her ministry for vicarious liability of an employee, then Torrell Sauter herself came within the exceptions to non-prosecution under the State Immunity Act, as she most certainly was out on a frolic of her own when performing actions completely unconnected with her police work. Telling whopping great big fibs to the nation certainly brought the Norwegian police service into disrepute. Mrs. Justice Sharp never answered my point on Miss Sauter being out on a frolic of her own. When I told her that the Dagbladet journalist who interviewed Torrell Sauter in December 2005 for his front page story on me, one Morton Overby, that he, Morton Overby, had by April 2007 declared Torrell Sauter to be a no-brainer liar in a recorded conversation, Mrs. Justice Sharp told me that the opinion of a journalist is neither here nor there. So the central evidence from the very person who first wrote that massive story, that when he comes to realise Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter is a liar, a no-brainer liar, Mrs. Justice Sharp says that his opinion is the opinion of a journalist is neither here nor there. What utter rubbish! What kind of a person are you, Mrs. Justice Sharp? You know, it's incredible what you get away with. So Morton Overby, the journalist in Dagbladet's admission, was pivotal in my attempt to prove that Police Sergeant Torrell Sauter was an abject liar. Who really belonged in prison. Mrs. Justice Sharp was a cheat, a complete cheat, for turning a blind eye to Torrell Sauter's filthy lie. It was the entire basis of my case. Mrs. Justice Sharp even ruled that I was harassing Torrell Sauter when I reprimanded her in 2007 in frustration. I left some voicemails on her phone condemning her for her outrageous lie of my spending 2 years in a mental hospital. So Mrs. Justice Sharp condemns me for my reprimands. I mean, this is shit. What also came into the mix when setting aside my judgment was that I had not come up with anyone who had seen the libel for themselves on the internet. Under a case called Mardas, I was obliged to come up with at least a dozen people who had seen the latest incarnation on the internet of me being labelled clearly mentally unstable. I couldn't. Others may well have seen it and would no doubt be seeing it in the future, but I had to be told about it by these people, these third parties, and present their evidence to the judge in court in order to succeed in my High Court libel claim. You see, the laws of libel catered only for the famous in society, celebrities. Internet libels on a celebrity would soon be seen by their many friends and associates who would tell the celebrity, and the lawyer representing that victim would get together a batch of witness statements supporting the requirements of Mardas, that others had seen the libel and were offended by its untruth. An unknown like myself would not be afforded such an easy road to prove one's case. Only one friend of mine saw the Ica Bloody 2010 libel, Salim Akbar, who phoned me up to tell me that the Norwegians thought I was mad. Not only that, I had no idea when facing Mrs. Justice Sharp that I had to prove the Translate This Page link was put there by the journalist, defendant Roy Hansen. He, Mr. Hansen, did not turn up for the hearing and put in no evidence or even lodge a defence. I had sent him a letter before claim. He did not respond. I had assumed that the High Court would accept that the link did not appear other than by the hand of Roy Hansen. Mrs. Justice Sharp, in her cunning, decided that Google themselves were probably responsible and that Roy Hansen was blameless. Only after that hearing did I obtain an expert witness statement. Which was 100% clear that with a little-known method of using Google Webmaster Tools, Roy Hansen did put up his Translate This Page link to his Norwegian language document. So he was responsible. But of course that evidence was sent to the Court of Appeal several times, but they couldn't be bothered to mention it. That's disgraceful. After Mrs. Justice Sharp's judgment exonerating Toril Sauter, the Translate This Page link to the Ica Bloody article was removed. It could only have been done by Roy Hansen of Ica Bloody, the co-defendant. It's amazing. In my applications in 2016, 2020, 2022, 2023 applications, this expert evidence was ignored, and my applications to reopen my 2011 case declared as totally without merit. Thanks now to the 26th of July 2023 judgment by Sir Geoffrey Vos, it remains the case that by Mrs. Justice Sharp's 2011 judgment, Roy Hansen was still not to blame for the Translate This Page link, even though he clearly was, and I remain one who is clearly mentally unstable, who did not take the libel proceedings in order to vindicate his reputation. And there is still in the 23rd edition of the massive Gatley on Libel and Slander, this massive book here, I'll show it to you, Gatley on Libel and Slander, and I have you can see it there, a 17-line entry there on my case saying basically that I did not take the case in order to vindicate my reputation. So, in spite of years of asking Gatley on Libel and Slander to change that rubbish, they won't, and they never will now. And who controls Gatley on Libel and Slander? The chambers of 5 Raymond Buildings, 5RB, headed by that, at the time, the judge who eventually decided to strike me off, Lord Justice Warby. He was joint head of chambers in 2011 at the time of my case that was taken by his colleague David Hurst. And he now says he's got no recollection of events, then, even though in the same week as judgment was handed down by Sharp, and the Chambers clients were blown up, and the biggest mass murder in Norwegian history had taken place. Lord Justice Warby says now in 2023 he has no recollection of my case or the events. No, not really. So basically, what I'm going to do is continue this case in another YouTube presentation tomorrow, and you will see for yourselves the overwhelming deceit and Islamophobia and cover-up that has come forth from the judiciary at the High Court, and you'll be amazed. So, just wait and see for yourselves. All the best. Good night.